My name is Marigold Reyes, and the night I realized my aunt had stolen my grandmother's jewelry, we were surrounded by candlelight and congratulations. It was my engagement dinner. Glasses clinked. People said soft, glittering words. My Aunt Lydia leaned close, perfume sweet and too heavy, and said quietly, "I had your grandmother's bracelet appraised. Truly exquisite. You should be careful with things you do not understand." She said it like a warning disguised as kindness. That bracelet had been mine since I was 16. My grandmother pressed it into my hand and whispered, "Keep what carries love." I wore it often. I remembered its weight. But that night when Lydia spoke, my wrist felt bare. At home, I checked the velvet dish on my dresser. Empty. The locket and ring that matched the bracelet were missing too. My heart beat slow. Heavy. I went to the small safe Thomas installed for peace of mind. The keypad tone chirped soft. I opened it. Empty. Only a new appraisal dated last week, with my name printed in a font I would never choose. The envelope had been opened and sealed again. Thomas stood behind me, hands warm on my shoulders. "You look pale. Do you want tea?" "Did you open the safe?" I asked. "We changed the batteries, remember?" It beeped. His tone was gentle. Too gentle. "Maybe you moved things." I called Lydia. She answered immediately as if waiting. "I want them back," I said. She laughed. "Oh, Marigold. I protected them. Heirlooms need proper handling. I'll show you the papers next time. You'll thank me." She hung up before I answered. Thomas rubbed my back. "Your aunt is dramatic. Let me smooth this out." But something in his voice matched hers. Controlled. Practiced. I drove to the storage unit alone before dawn. The backup lockbox where I kept original papers sat on the highest shelf. I opened it. The velvet pouch was there. The jewelry was not. Only the old appraisal remained, and next to it, a printed note that did not belong to me. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A photograph of the bracelet, ring, and locket on a jeweler's tray. The caption read, "Authenticated. Registered to Marigold Reyes." Registered. Not owned by whoever held them. Registered to me. I called the number. "Hartley Jewelers," a man said, calm and professional. "This is Marigold Reyes. Someone brought my grandmother's pieces to you." "Yes, Miss Reyes," he said. "Your aunt requested appraisal and consignment. However, your grandmother registered the jewelry with us years ago. Each piece is listed under your name in our ledger. We legally could not transfer ownership." I closed my eyes. My grandmother had protected me long before I knew I needed protection. Did my aunt try to sell them? I asked. "She attempted consignment," he confirmed. "We refused. We retained the originals of all documentation. There is also a sealed note in our file, addressed to you, written by your grandmother." A note. Waiting for me. Who was with my aunt? I asked. "A man," he said. He signed the client sheet as household representative, Thomas Reyes Collins. My fiancé, Thomas, standing beside Lydia, signing on my behalf. My chest went still. Not breaking. Hardening. "Are the pieces still there?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "We are holding them in secured custody. You may retrieve them any time. I would recommend bringing legal counsel. Your aunt was displeased when we declined her request." I looked at Thomas's contacts still glowing on my screen. I did not cry. I did not accuse. I did not speak. Picked up my keys. I was not going to confront my aunt. Not yet. I was going to read the letter my grandmother left for me. Hartley Jewelers sat on a quiet corner of the old district, the kind of place my grandmother would have called dignified. When I stepped inside, the air smelled of wood polish and soft light. A man in a navy vest recognized me instantly. "Miss Reyes," he said. "Your grandmother asked us to contact you one day. I did not expect it to be under strain." He took me to a small consultation room. No glass counters. No displays. Just a desk, a chair, and a safe bolted to the floor. He opened it and removed a cream-colored folder tied with a thin silk ribbon. "She left this with instructions," he said gently. "It was to be given only upon proof that the pieces had been taken without your consent." I didn't speak. I couldn't. My grandmother had known this was coming. Inside the folder were the original appraisals dated decades back. Each document bore her signature on one side and mine on the other. Beneath them was a sealed envelope. My grandmother's handwriting curved across the front. For Marigold. When trust becomes tested. My hand shook once. Only once. Then steadied. I opened it. Her voice unfolded across the page like she had written it yesterday. My girl. I have loved many things in my life. But I learned late that love can be used as a tool by those who do not feel it. If someone close to you treats what I leave as currency, then know this. I chose you because you do not confuse possession with value. Asterisk. The pieces are yours. Not because they are beautiful. Because they carry memory. And memory belongs only to the one who honors it. If they are taken, retrieve them. Quietly. Calmly. With evidence, not emotion. The jeweler will help you. Your father's lawyer will help you. Trust your stillness. It is your sharpest blade. Grandmother. I read the letter 3 times. Not to understand it. To absorb the steadiness inside it. The jeweler returned with a small black case. The bracelet. The locket. The ring. Protected. Waiting. We will not release these to anyone but you, he said. I nodded. I need copies of your paperwork. Her signatures. The consignment attempt. The security footage. He did not hesitate. He had seen this before. While he prepared the documents, I stepped into the alley behind the store and called my father's lawyer, the one my grandmother named. His voice was old and measured. If Lydia attempted consignment under false ownership, we can pursue return and injunction. If Thomas represented her, we pursue him as well. Represented. Such a cold word for betrayal. When can we begin? I asked. Now, he said. But first, do not go home. Do not confront them. Not until we secure what matters. But confrontation did not wait for permission. When I stepped back into the street, I saw Lydia's car parked across from the jeweler. Engine running. Windows tinted. She had been watching. My phone buzzed. A message from her. Come to the house. We need to talk. Family deserves privacy. Privacy means silence. Silence is where theft grows roots. I didn't reply. Instead, I texted Thomas, I know. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then returned. We can fix this, he wrote. Do not make it bigger than it is. Bigger than it is? They had stolen not jewelry but trust, history, and inheritance. I walked away from the jeweler. Jewelry in my bag. Grandmother's letter close to my chest. I drove to my sister's house. She opened the door, saw my face, and said nothing. She simply stepped aside and let me in. I spread the documents across her kitchen table. She read. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes darkened. She didn't just take what belonged to you, she said. She wanted to take who Grandma chose. Grandma hadn't left the jewelry for wealth. She left it as proof of memory, proof of belonging, proof of legacy. And Lydia had tried to rewrite that legacy. Thomas had helped. My sister reached for her car keys. We're getting a lawyer, she said. No, I said softly. We already have one. We sat in silence, the house warm, the world cold. Then headlights swept across the window. 2 shadows walked toward the porch. One tall, one familiar. Thomas and Lydia, coming to reclaim what they thought was theirs. They thought I would open the door and argue. But I had my grandmother's letter, and evidence changes everything. I did not open the door. Thomas knocked first. Polite, controlled, the way he always started. Then Lydia, sharper. Marigold, we are not doing this in front of neighbors. Open the door. My sister stood beside me, arms folded, phone in hand. Not recording. Not calling. Just ready. I spoke through the door. The jewelry has been retrieved. The jeweler confirmed registration. I have the paperwork. Silence. The kind that rearranges a room. Then Lydia said, You are misunderstanding. No, I said. You are. Thomas tried the softer angle. We can talk this through. Mistakes were made. Your grandmother would not want. My grandmother left me a letter, I said. The doorknob stilled. They had not expected that. I heard Lydia exhale through her teeth. She was confused near the end. Sentimental. She would not have meant for you to cling to old things instead of moving forward with family. Family. That was the word people use when they want you to surrender. I unlocked the deadbolt, not to invite them in but to open the space between us. I stepped onto the porch. My sister stood behind me. Thomas's face softened, rehearsed concern. Marigold, we love you. We're all adjusting to the engagement that changes. People act impulsively when they're overwhelmed. I held up the jeweler's folder. Thin. Precise. Heavy with truth. This is not impulsive. This is documentation. Signatures. Timestamps. Video. Lydia's expression flickered. Only for a breath. Then she smiled. A practiced, glossy smile. Fine. You retrieved them. Good. Then bring them back so we can file everything properly. You are not comfortable managing heirlooms of this value. My grandmother believed I was, I said. Her smile cracked. A hairline fracture. Enough. Thomas stepped forward, lowering his voice. If you go legal with this, it will embarrass the entire family. You know that. There it was. Not apology. Not correction. Threat of shame. I'm not embarrassed, I said. You are. His jaw tightened, the first real emotion. Lydia reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope and extended it to me. Here. You will sign this. It clarifies ownership and storage rights. Keeps the pieces safe. I didn't take it. Who drafted it? I asked. A friend, she said quickly. My sister laughed once. Cold. So not a lawyer. I felt the shift. Small. But complete. They were no longer controlling the narrative. They were reacting to mine. I kept my voice even. You attempted to consign property you do not own. You accessed a safe without permission. You signed paperwork under my name. And you did it with my fiancé's cooperation. Thomas opened his mouth but I cut him off, calm, quiet, final. My attorney already has the footage. Both of them froze. Because power is not volume. Power is being prepared. Lydia's smile vanished. You are making a mistake. You think you can isolate us? You isolated yourselves, I said. When you decided I didn't need to know what belonged to me. I stepped back inside. Closed the door. Engaged the lock. Outside, Lydia slapped Thomas's arm. Their voices rose in sharp, frantic whispers. Control slipping. My sister exhaled slow. So, step 1 is done. No, I said. Step 1 was retrieving the jewelry. This is step 2, she said. We confront them legally. I nodded, but my mind was already elsewhere. Because the jeweler had said something I had not asked about yet. A sealed note. From my grandmother. Left in the private ledger. Separate from the letter I read. One note for when trust breaks. One note for what comes after. I opened my bag and pulled out the small sealed envelope I had not yet opened. My name written on it but in a different ink. A different pressure. A different moment. I sat at my sister's kitchen table. Hand steady. Breath even. I opened it. My grandmother had not only expected the theft. She had predicted what Lydia was after next. And it had nothing to do with jewelry. The second letter was shorter. Sharper. Written with a steadier hand than the first. It was not sentimental. It was strategic. Marigold. If you are reading this, they are not after jewelry. They are after the agreement. The jewelry is only proof of ownership. What they want is proof of entitlement. Look in the cedar chest. Under the lining. Gee. The cedar chest. The one my grandmother kept at the foot of her bed. Filled with quilts and lavender sachets. I hadn't opened it since the funeral. My sister drove. Neither of us spoke. The house sat dark and quiet when we arrived. The porch light unchanged since the day we packed her things. The air inside smelled like dust and time. We went to the bedroom. The cedar chest stood where it always had. I lifted the lid. Quilts. Folded sweaters. A tin box of buttons. Lavender still faint in the wood. My sister peeled back the lining. There it was. A folder thick, sealed with the county clerk's stamp. Inside. A property transfer agreement. Signed. Dated. Witnessed. 3 years before she died. My grandmother had transferred the house and land to me fully. Not as inheritance. Not as a future bequest. as a completed gift, protected from probate, protected from challenge. Lydia had never been cut out of a will. There was no dramatic removal. She simply had never been entitled to anything in the first place. The will was irrelevant. The jewelry was symbolic. The house and the land beneath it was already mine. My sister breathed out. She knew Lydia would try. She had. And she had planned accordingly. We heard a car door outside. Not just one. Two. I looked through the window. Lydia's car. And Thomas's. They had followed us. My sister whispered. How did they? Because Thomas still had a key. Because I had not changed the locks. Because he assumed access to my life was permanent. The back door latch clicked. My sister grabbed my arm. Living room, I said quietly. Let them speak where we can see them. We stepped into the hall just as they entered. Lydia's expression was polished confidence, but her eyes were sharp with calculation. Thomas looked tired. Not remorseful, just inconvenienced. Lydia didn't bother with greetings. You do not understand the responsibilities attached to this estate. Your grandmother was sentimental. You are not equipped to manage this property. My sister laughed, one single sound like a spark catching dry leaves. I laid the deed transfer on the coffee table. Neat. Unshaken. This is not an estate, I said. It is not part of probate. The property was transferred during her lifetime. Legally. Final. Irrevocable. Lydia's face drained just enough for the truth to show. Thomas spoke carefully, like stepping across thin ice. We can work out terms. Maybe shared management. A joint sale. Something reasonable. Reasonable. People use that word when they want you to surrender quietly. No, I said. Lydia stepped closer. You are making choices you will regret. I am making choices she prepared me for, I said. She looked at the chest. The quilts. The folder. Her voice thinned. She promised it to me. Promises spoken are not legal, I said. Papers signed are. Thomas rubbed his jaw. If we go to court, this becomes public. Your reputation will remain intact, I said. Yours will not. Silence pressed the room flat. Then Lydia tried one last angle. She raised us both. I was there too. I took care of her too. Yes, I said. And she still didn't trust you. The words landed like a closing door. She blinked. Once. Then her face hardened. This is not over. She turned. Thomas followed. The door closed behind them. My sister exhaled. They are going to fight. I know. And you're ready? I looked down at my grandmother's handwriting. Steady. Clear. Unafraid. I am now. My phone buzzed. A notification. Not from Lydia. Not from Thomas. From the county recorder's office. A digital alert tied to the property address. Title inquiry requested by third party. Lydia was trying to challenge the deed, and she had already hired a lawyer. The title inquiry alert wasn't a surprise. It was confirmation. Lydia hadn't come to plead or negotiate. She had come to assess my reaction. If I had opened the door earlier, if I had cried, if I had argued, if I had begged, she would have known I was unprepared. She would have filed quietly. She would have taken the house, then the land, then the rest of my grandmother's story. But I hadn't opened the door. And now she was moving fast. I forwarded the alert to my attorney, Mr. Hastings, my grandmother's lawyer, the one she had specifically named in both letters. His reply came within minutes. Do not contact them. Do not confront them. Bring the transfer documents to my office at 10 tomorrow. This is manageable. Manageable. I like that word. Manageable means winnable. My sister made coffee. Neither of us slept. We sat at the kitchen table and laid everything out in order. The original jewelry registration. The attempted consignment paperwork. The letter explaining the intent of the gift. The property transfer deed. The witness signatures. The date stamps. A clean chain. A legal spine. Still the air felt tight. Not uncertain. Alert. Morning came pale and thin. We drove to Mr. Hastings's office. Old brick. Ivy along the windows. The kind of place where time does not rush. He welcomed us inside like we were already expected. Your grandmother prepared for this, he said without pleasantries. She knew Lydia would attempt to claim ownership out of entitlement. She also knew your fiancé would support her. I blinked. She knew about Thomas? He nodded. Your grandmother had a talent for reading character. Thomas's family has a history of financial failure. His sudden interest in marriage aligned too precisely with your inheritance timeline. I sat very still. Everyone else had treated Thomas like a blessing I was lucky to have. My grandmother had seen him clearly. Hastings continued, voice calm and exact. The property transfer is ironclad. But Lydia is emotional, not strategic. She will try to make this personal. She already has. Her attorney has filed a challenge on grounds of undue influence. Meaning she was going to claim my grandmother hadn't been in her right mind. Meaning she was going to drag my grandmother's memory through court. Meaning this was no longer about jewelry or houses. It was about erasing my grandmother's intention. That was the line I could not allow her to cross. What do we do? I asked. We counter before her petition is approved, Hastings said. We will present evidence of your grandmother's mental competence at the time of signing. Medical records, letters, recorded communications, witness statements. And he tapped the folder. The jeweler's sealed note. My grandmother's second note. The one I had not read yet. He slid it toward me. I have not opened it. It was addressed to you alone. But I suspect it is meant to testify to her intent. My hands were steady when I broke the seal. If she challenges my clarity, show them my handwriting. Show them the ledger. Show them the dates I published articles, the taxes I filed, the appointments I scheduled myself. Minds do not fade in a single afternoon. Lydia confuses desire with deserving. Let the court see the difference. Gee. My sister let out a breath that trembled at the edges. Hastings smiled slightly. Your grandmother left us everything we need. And one more detail. He opened his own file drawer and pulled out a set of notarized photographs. Images of my grandmother signing the deed, date stamped, witnessed, healthy, alert, unmistakably present. Lydia had nothing. No grounds. No claim. No documentation. Just entitlement. We stood to leave, and Hastings handed me one more document. File this today, he said. A temporary restraining order preventing Lydia and Thomas from entering the property or contacting you during proceedings. It was already filled out. All it needed was my signature. As I signed, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A photograph. Not of jewelry. Not of papers. But of my grandmother's garden. Her rose beds freshly dug up. Plants uprooted. Soil overturned. Something deliberate. Something cruel. And a text. If you won't give it back, we'll take it piece by piece. My sister's shoulders went rigid. My pulse didn't quicken. Because something had shifted. They were no longer hiding what they were willing to destroy. This was no longer just legal. It was personal, and they had just made their first mistake. The photo of my grandmother's garden stayed on my screen for a long moment. Freshly overturned soil. Roots exposed. Roses snapped at the stems. Not random. Not careless. Intentional. They wanted to rattle me. They wanted me emotional. People make mistakes when they defend memories instead of protecting evidence. But my grandmother had already taught me how to choose. We go now, my sister said, already grabbing her keys. No, I said. We go correctly. I forwarded the photo to Mr. Hastings with a single line. Harassment and property damage. We proceed. His reply came back in less than a minute. Document everything. Do not respond to them directly. Meet me at the property. And bring no one else. My sister nodded once. She understood. This was no longer an argument. This was case building. The drive to my grandmother's house felt different than it had the night before. The road looked the same. The trees looked the same. But something had shifted. They had crossed into territory my grandmother cherished. A place that held her hands, her voice, her quiet patience. And I was not going to let them take it. When we pulled into the driveway, Mr. Hastings was already there with a camera, a clipboard, and a calm expression that somehow felt more powerful than any anger could. He walked the garden like an investigator, not a mourner. He took photos from multiple angles, measured footprints in the soft soil, examined tire tracks. Two people, he said. One heavier, one lighter. The same pair who were at the porch last night. Thomas and Lydia had not even tried to hide it. He photographed the broken roses carefully, documenting each cut, each torn stem, each uprooted root system. This is emotional violence disguised as landscaping, he said. Judges understand patterns. He made notes. Precise, clinical, unbothered. Now, he said, we file the restraining order. And we escalate. Not retaliation. Procedure. We went back inside. The house felt still. Not empty, not abandoned. Like it had been waiting. Hastings spread the documents across the dining room table. He was not hurried. He was methodical. We will file for an emergency temporary restraining order today. That will bar both Lydia and Thomas from the property. Then we schedule a hearing. We call the jeweler as a witness, the notary, the neighbors who saw your grandmother gardening last spring. We show the timeline of competence. We show Lydia's attempted consignment. We show the property damage as an intimidation tactic. We let their own behavior prove our case. My sister nodded along, jaw tight. I asked only one question. What happens when Lydia realizes she's losing? Hastings didn't smile. He just looked at me, steady, direct. She will try to play victim. And when that fails, she will try to provoke you. Your job is not to respond. Your job is to remain still. He paused. Stillness is not weakness. Stillness is accuracy. Stillness. The word felt familiar. The way my grandmother moved. The way she listened. The way she waited for clarity before speaking. I understood. We completed the paperwork. I signed where he pointed. No hesitation. When we stepped outside, Lydia's car was parked at the end of the road. Not approaching. Just waiting. She expected shouting. She expected confrontation. She expected me to come to her. I didn't. I simply lifted my phone and took her picture. From that distance, she couldn't tell if I was recording video or capturing stills. She only knew she was being documented. Her engine started. Her car pulled away. My sister exhaled. She looked scared. No, I said. She looked seen. We drove to the courthouse. Filed the restraining order. Stamped, log, processed. Now it was official. They were not allowed to come near me, my sister, or the property. We were one step ahead. But Hastings was right. Lydia wouldn't stop. Not yet. That night, as I sat on my grandmother's porch, I finally allowed myself a quiet moment. The roses would bloom again. Roots regrow. Memory persists. My phone buzzed. A message. From Thomas. We need to talk. Without lawyers. You're making this ugly. I stared at the screen, calm. Then another message followed. If you don't answer, I'll come to the house. He didn't know about the restraining order yet. Tomorrow he would, in front of a judge. The next morning, the courthouse hallway smelled like paper, cold air and nerves. My sister sat beside me, steady and warm. Mr. Hastings stood near the door, reviewing documents one last time, though we all knew everything was already in order. Thomas arrived first. He looked exactly the same, pressed shirt, clean shave, practice calm. But something in his eyes flickered when he saw I did not stand up. I did not rush toward him. I did not try to speak. I simply looked at him as if he were a stranger, because now legally he was. Lydia rushed in seconds later, wearing grief like a costume. A folded tissue in her hand. Slight tremble. Downcast gaze. Every move rehearsed. She didn't even look at me. She looked at the judge's door. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was performance. The bailiff opened the door. Parties for Reyes versus Collins in Dalton. We walked in. The judge was calm, alert, the kind of person who doesn't tolerate theatrics. Good. Hastings presented the restraining order request without emotion. Just facts. Photographs of the property damage. A security footage stills from the jeweler's office. The signed consignment attempt. The property deed transfer. Notarized and date stamped. My grandmother's documented medical evaluations showing mental clarity during the signing period. Every page was a brick in a wall neither Lydia nor Thomas could climb. When it was their turn, Lydia's attorney stood. She spoke about family, grief, sentiment, and misunderstandings. Words meant to make emotion sound like law. Then Thomas rose. He didn't look at me until he did. Marigold has been under a lot of stress, he said, voice soft and pained. Her grandmother's passing affected her deeply. I believe she's acting out of confusion and influence from others who are encouraging conflict. Others? Meaning my sister. Meaning Hastings. Meaning anyone who didn't agree with him. He smiled at me. The same smile he used when convincing me I had misremembered conversations he didn't want to acknowledge. Gaslighting wearing a tailored suit. The judge turned to me. Ms. Reyes, do you have anything to say? I stood. Not shaking. Not breaking. Just present. My grandmother left instructions because she knew this would happen, I said. She gave me the property while she was healthy. She documented it. She had it witnessed. She registered the jewelry in my name. There is no confusion. There is only entitlement. I placed the sealed note on the evidence table, the one that described Lydia's pattern, in my grandmother's own handwriting. The judge read it slowly, line by line. When she finished, she looked up. Restraint order granted. All contact, direct or indirect, is prohibited. Lydia Dalton and Thomas Collins are barred from the property effective immediately. Lydia inhaled sharply, the first real reaction she had shown. Thomas didn't move. Not anger. Not shock. Something like calculation. He was thinking. Adapting. Plotting the next angle. Outside, Lydia snapped. You think this house will save you, she hissed. You are naive. That land is worth more than you understand. Do you think you were the only one she promised it to? Everyone knew it would be mine. No, I said. Everyone assumed. Hastings stepped between us. This conversation is over. The order is active. He guided me away. My sister walked on my other side. We didn't look back. But as we reached the sidewalk, I saw Thomas watching us. Not Lydia. Not the judge. His eyes were cold, focused, strategic. He wasn't finished. That night at my grandmother's house, the wind shook the windows softly. I sat at her old desk, the one with the carved corner she used to trace while thinking. I was not afraid, just alert. Then my phone lit up. A message. From a number I didn't know. But the attachment told me who sent it. A scan of a bank signature card. My name. Not my handwriting. Thomas had forged my signature before. This wasn't just about the house. He had touched my accounts. The forged signature stared back at me from the screen. My name curved wrong. Too neat. Too careful. Thomas had always tried to mimic precision he didn't naturally possess. I showed the message to my sister. She didn't gasp. She didn't panic. She said, "He did not expect you to have proof of your grandmother. He thinks money is a different battlefield." He wasn't wrong. Money was his language. So I spoke it back to him. Fluently. I forwarded the document to Mr. Hastings. His reply came in seconds. Do nothing directly. We handle this quietly. Meet me at the bank at 9. No explanations. No emotional reaction. Just procedure. Stillness as strategy. I slept in my grandmother's room that night. The house felt awake. Not haunting watching. The next morning we walked into the bank like any other customers. But our appointment was not with the teller. It was with the branch manager. Her name was Miss Avery. Hair pulled into a smooth twist, voice calm and observant. Professional. Unimpressed by theatrics. Exactly the type my grandmother had liked. Hastings laid the forged signature in front of her. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. When was this authorization added? Hastings asked. She tapped a few keys. Her mouth tightened. 3 weeks ago, she said. Requested by your fiancé. My sister whispered. Before the dinner. Meaning Thomas had been planning this long before the jewelry disappeared. Meaning the engagement dinner was not celebration. It was timing. I leaned forward. Was there any phone verification on file? Voice match? Miss Avery shook her head. No. He presented identification and claimed you were home recovering from illness and asked us not to disturb you. The familiar script. The one abusers use when they need silence to look like consent. Hastings spoke evenly. We will need a full audit of all account activity since the authorization date, copies of the security footage, and the bank's written acknowledgement of unauthorized access. Ms. Avery nodded. I'll begin the request immediately. And Ms. Reyes? She looked directly at me. Her voice softened. This will be corrected. There it was again. The same quiet certainty my grandmother had written in every letter. The truth is not fragile. It simply requires patience. As we left the bank, my phone buzzed. Not a message. A notification. Withdrawal attempt declined. Incorrect verification code entered. He was trying right now. He didn't know the authorization had already been flagged. He was still acting like I was behind him, still assuming compliance, still believing love meant access. We drove straight to Hastings's office. He was already drafting motions. We will file financial injunction today, he said. This freezes all joint accounts and prevents further changes to ownership. He will learn about it when his card stops working. The smallest smile touched the corner of my mouth. Not joy. Recognition. Thomas had built his image on control, on being the one who explained finances, guided decisions, held all passwords. And now he would have to face himself without any of that. While Hastings worked, my sister stepped outside to take a call. When she returned, her face was pale, but not scared. Angry. She handed me her phone. On the screen was a post from Lydia's social media. A photo of my grandmother's house, my house, taken from the street. Captioned, "Some people would rather destroy family than honor it. Pray for us as we fight for what is rightfully ours." Thousands of likes. Dozens of comments. People calling me selfish, ungrateful, cruel. They were building a story, but they forgot something. Stories can be documented. And I had documents. All of them. Let them talk, I said quietly. Because silence is not surrender. Silence is preparation. Just then, Hastings's phone rang. He answered, listened, then passed it to me. It's the jeweler. My heart didn't race. I asked, "Is everything all right?" The jeweler inhaled slowly, controlled. "Your aunt returned," he said. "She tried again. This time she didn't bring jewelry." He paused. "She brought your grandmother's handwritten recipe book. She tried to consign it. Said it was vintage memorabilia. Not jewelry. Not land. Not money. Memory. The last thing she could take. This was not about inheritance anymore. This was about erasing my grandmother from the story entirely. The recipe book was the last piece of my grandmother that still smelled like her. Lavender, cinnamon, old paper, time. The ink faded in places where her hand had paused, where she'd thought longer than she stirred. Lydia didn't want it because it was valuable. She wanted it because it was evidence of who my grandmother had loved most. She wanted to remove memory itself. The jeweler said she'd been angry this time. Not smug. Not composed. Angry people make mistakes. He recorded the entire interaction. Audio. Video. Sign-in log. A time-stamped refusal. We drove to collect the footage. Not to confront Lydia. To gather what we needed to end this cleanly. The jeweler had placed the recipe book inside a protective case, handled like something sacred. He slid it across the counter to me. "I'm sorry," he said. I shook my head. "You have nothing to be sorry for. You protected what mattered." He hesitated, then added quietly. "She said something strange before she left. She said, she doesn't deserve the story. The story. Not the things. The belonging. This had never been about objects. This was about identity." In the car, I rested the book in my lap. My sister drove. Neither of us spoke. Because we both understood what Lydia was trying to do. If she couldn't own the house, she would own the story of the house. If she couldn't take the jewelry, she would take the meaning of the jewelry. If she couldn't erase the deed, she would erase what the deed represented. She wanted my grandmother's love, rewritten to point toward herself. We arrived at grandmother's house in silence. I set the recipe book on the kitchen table, the same place my grandmother used to roll dough on Sunday mornings. The sunlight hit the cover just right, like the room recognized it. Hastings spread the jeweler's footage across the table with the rest of our evidence. "This," he said, "is the final piece. The court does not rule based on sentiment. It rules based on pattern. And this pattern is undeniable. Possession, deception, attempted conversion, and intent to defraud." Intent. The word settled into the floorboards. He drafted the motion to file the full injunction and request a summary ruling. Meaning, no drawn-out trial. No months of hearings. No emotional spectacle. Just clarity. Signed. Stamped. Final. We were ready. But court filings move on schedule. And Lydia and Thomas were not patient. That evening, as we sat on the porch, headlights swept across the driveway. A car engine idled. Doors did not open. My sister leaned forward. They're watching. Let them, I said. I took a photograph. Another. Time-stamped. Clear line of sight. Evidence. No shouting. No confrontation. Just documentation. They eventually drove away. The porch light hummed softly. The house felt steady again. Inside, I opened the recipe book. Not because I needed comfort, but because I needed direction. A page fell loose, one I hadn't seen before. Not a recipe. A note. Marigold. If they try to take the house, let them see who built it. Call the Historical Preservation Office if necessary. They have the photographs. They know the truth of this place. Gee. Historical preservation. Not a sentimental detail. A legal classification. A record of the house's original ownership, restoration, and familial lineage. Meaning, the house wasn't just my inheritance. It was a registered historical family property. Meaning, could not be sold, could not be claimed, could not be transferred. Not to Lydia. Not to Thomas. Not to anyone outside the bloodline. My grandmother had secured the legacy at a level Lydia didn't even know existed. My sister laughed, not joy, relief edged with awe. She outplayed them while she was alive, she whispered. No, I said. She outplayed them because she knew who they were. The next morning we would file everything. The case would end. But endings have timing of their own. Because just as I closed the book, my phone buzzed. A message. No words. Just a single photo. My grandmother's gravestone. Fresh flowers torn out. Soil disturbed. Someone standing just outside frame. They had stopped trying to take what was mine. Now they were trying to break what I loved. The photo of the overturned flowers at my grandmother's grave was not meant to threaten my case. It was meant to threaten me. They wanted grief to do what legal pressure couldn't. They wanted my heart to break loudly enough to sabotage itself. But my grandmother had taught me something before she ever taught me to braid dough or fold linen napkins. Grief can be quiet and still and sharp enough to cut cleanly. I forwarded the photo to Mr. Hastings. No message. He already knew its meaning. The next morning we filed everything. The property deed transfer. The jewelry registry records. The consignment refusal footage. The financial audit. The forged signature report. The restraining order violations. And now, the vandalism at the cemetery, documented and time-stamped. Hastings presented it to the judge like a finished puzzle. Lydia and Thomas didn't speak much during the hearing. Not because they had nothing to say, but because every word, every expression, every attempt at justification had already been neutralized by evidence. The judge ruled in less than 15 minutes. Property. Legally and permanently mine. Financial access. Revoked for Thomas, pending fraud review. Restraining orders. Extended to 1 full year. Additional charges. Under investigation. There was no dramatic outburst. No shouting. No dramatic exit. Just the quiet collapse of a story they had tried to write over me. Outside the courthouse, Lydia stared at me like she didn't recognize my face. Not because I had changed, but because the version of me she relied on no longer existed. Thomas didn't look at me at all. He just walked. Leaving was always the one thing he was good at. My sister and I drove home with the windows down. The air smelled like warm cedar and cut grass. The sky looked like the same one my grandmother had watched from her kitchen window for decades. Back at the house, I replanted the roses. Not because I needed to fix what they broke, but because restoring something is a form of remembering. I opened the recipe book again and set it on the counter. The page with her handwriting lay smooth beneath my palm. You didn't lose, I whispered. We didn't let them. The house was quiet but not empty. Felt right again. If you are still listening, hear me carefully. People will call you dramatic when they are afraid of you seeing clearly. They will call you ungrateful when they can no longer use you. They will call you cruel when you refuse to surrender what is yours. Let them talk. You do not need to argue a truth you can prove. Keep records. Stay steady. Protect what holds memory. And never let someone rewrite the story of who you were loved by. Your voice is enough. Your stillness is power. Your story is yours to keep.